So thank you for joining, and welcome to the session. This is going to be a different session probably than most of the other sessions at the conference, because well, I have got a different background. John, you're still not muted. Yeah, thanks. Simply because I'm kind of always a weird duck, and also with this title, I guess you expect something different. So, what is this all about? I think the key question that I would like you to take away is, what if you could use Postman for other things? What else could you do with Postman? And this presentation and this proposal for a presentation was totally inspired by a meeting I had with Ken Lane before the lockdowns in February. I'm in Belgium, so we've been pretty serious about our lockdowns here. I haven't been traveling for a long time, for forever it seems. But just before the lockdowns, I had this really fascinating discussion with Ken where he told that he had seen people in the Postman community, some of their large customers, use Postman in a very fascinating way. So he said that one of their customers, I think it was analysts, that were using Postman to trigger requests and to like download information from an API that they could then use in reports that they were preparing. So there were non-developers that were using Postman to get information out of APIs, so probably at some point the developer had shown them or had prepared this, and they were now using this on a regular basis to create these reports. And that was like super fascinating because it fit into a broader picture that I have been working on last year, thinking about what is the real value, or what is like the ultimate value of API programs, and how we can contribute to that. Because this is something that I think a lot about, because my company, Pronovix, we do developer portals. So we build we have a product that allows us to build really bespoke-looking developer portals. We can do all kinds of customizations and so on. It's built on open source software, Drupal. So after an engagement, you can own your portal. There's a whole bunch of services we do around that, all the way from developer experience services to information architecture, design. I won't go too much in detail, but through this, we also started the Dev Portal Awards, which is an award for the best developer portals out there, in which we, the reason why we started this was because we wanted to figure out, together with the community, what the best possible developer experience in a certain area was at any given time. And for the last couple of years, when we've been doing this and learning a lot together with the audience. And this one from 2020, it was online. We also recorded. I would recommend you to go and have a look, because there's a lot of really interesting content that came out of that. And then besides that, we do a lot of things in the community. We also have our own community, API to Docs, which is a conference series, now virtual, about developer portals and developer experience. And for all of this, just gonna put my timer. No, I can see the time, it's okay. For all of this, it's important for us to know, well, let me take one step back. When we started with doing developer portals, which is about 5 years ago, this all got triggered because I met a couple of really cool folks from Apogee, and we started talking about dev portals, and then we did some projects together, and became like a really big thing. This is a really important partner from us now. They're now part of Google Cloud, and the reason why we specialized in developer portals was because before we had been doing just generic websites, like whatever you want. And I was kind of fed up because we always just built what the customer asked us to build. And we didn't really have deep knowledge about the field. to be able to recommend like what's a good thing or what's maybe not such a good idea, what are better ways to solve certain problems. And like I care a lot about ultimate success for my customer. For me, I'm really happy when the person who brought this in can like really, you know, show like, okay, we did a good job. My boss is happy. We have real success with our API program. And that means that this has to go beyond just the dev portal. It has to also be about success in the API program. And so I started thinking about this, and this is actually not all that straightforward, because last year I worked on a maturity model for developer portals. This is the summary of it. To be able to build this, I needed a sort of maturity model for API programs, or for API initiatives. And if you listen to the API community, you can hear this at conferences. People talk about products. So, you know, normally you'll start in a project mode where you just start doing APIs, but you should be doing APIs as products, so that APIs are treated like products, so that they have a product budget, and they're going to keep being funded, so that people can trust that it's not just going to disappear. So that's really important. And then like the third stage is kind of like the API program. I know there's a couple of different maturity models out there. Some of them are more elaborate, more elaborate than this. But I think these are kind of like the three big stages in you know, API initiative maturity. And so the last step, kind of like what people talk about, is like this creating an API program where the whole organization now, and at least this is how I see it from my dev portal angle, the whole organization has the expectation that APIs will be available on the developer portal, and that you'll be able to go and look for APIs. In the Drupal community, we got the saying, there's a module for that. It's kind of like that, but like, you know, there's an API for that. This is what you want to get in your company, that developers have this impulse to say like, okay, there's an API for that. Go and look in the dev portal what's out there. The thing is that this is a lot about technology, and one of the things I've gotten kind of afraid about, or kind of cautious about, is tool fixation, where you know, if you're doing something because you're implementing a tool, probably there's something not completely right. You need to have some underlying business goal with what you're doing, because if you don't have a business goal, the value that you're going to create might not be, you know, the full value that's possible. So if it's about, you know, people are looking for APIs, I'm kind of like, okay, is this really the end state that we need to get to? Because if you think about it, it's not APIs that create value. It's people that create value using APIs. And I think this is also the strength of Postman, in that it improves the developer experience, and it makes it easier to use APIs. It makes it easier to collaborate on APIs. But ultimately, the real value that you're going to get out of an API is not the integration. It's going to be downstream, when that integration starts paying off, when somebody has used that API to create an application or an interface or something like that. And here I'd like to quickly define what I mean with interfaces, because that was also in my title. When I talk about interfaces, of course, well, I'm talking about REST APIs, but also async APIs, Kafka, SDKs, apps, widgets, QR codes, Postman collections, basically anything that allows you to interface, maybe using an API connection to get information or to get services out of a system. And this is why I believe that there's this fourth stage of true maturity for an API program. And this is when APIs have almost, maybe not become invisible, but they've become the backbone of your infrastructure. And it's not just developers that are using APIs. Now, it's your whole organization that is using APIs through the interfaces, and they know where to go and look for interfaces. And basically, when you need information or when you need a service and you don't really, you assume or you think that it might be automated, you go to the interface portal or whatever that is, go looking for that functionality. And it might be that you find an API, it might be that you find an app, it might be that you find a Postman collection that already uses the API to do specific functions and get specific capabilities out of the APIs. We had a lot of discussions about this. Like we started the API Resilience podcast right at the beginning of the Corona crisis, because I wanted to give the people that we work with and our community, the API community, stories that they could tell about the ultimate downstream value of API programs and developer portals, because it was not as scary as I was a little bit afraid of, because like APIs and digitization, digital transformation has been part of the solution for the Corona problem, like enabling work from home and remote work and things like that. Still, we're only at the, knock on wood. I hope it's not going to get too bad, but I think still a big crisis is still unfolding, and I think companies are careful with how they're spending their budgets. We don't feel that much about that from that, but I think that some of our partners and people in our community are feeling some of that strain, where they have to explain, like, yeah, I need to spend money on developer experience, because if I don't spend money in developer experience, this whole thing is just useless, because nobody can use it, and people don't trust my APIs and don't work with it. So we had a lot of these stories that we discussed, some origin stories with people who have built API programs out, like Koen Adolfs from ABN AMRO. You can see on Lorna Jane, and a lot of really good conversations. I'm kind of like a business philosopher, so a lot of this is together with Mark. This became quite a bit of a kind of a philosophy round, where we're going really deep on what is the real value of APIs and how can we get it out of our programs. And I'd like to summarize a little bit the ideas behind that, to give you an idea. To further explain this idea about the interface economy and what I was talking about, for how you could use Postman to do even more with than beyond the developer experience components that I think most of you are using Postman for. But to be able to explain that a little bit, I need to go a little bit deeper and start from digital transformation. Now, I think digital transformation means different things for everybody. Like I've talked with a bunch of people, and everybody that I asked at an event a couple of years ago, and everybody I asked had a different definition. So it's kind of funny. My definition is that what you're trying to do is you want to go from information and services mediated through people to information services mediated through interfaces. You want to be able to allow people to find new information or new services without them having to contact a colleague, self-service basically. And this is the core for me, at least. And an added component to that is that we're all drowning in cognitive overload, especially now with the whole Corona information overload and the working from home and just way too many calls and whatever. It's, I think, one of the other things that digital transformation needs to address is how to know what is important to do and what is worth doing and what needs doing. And I think one of the patterns that can be followed to address that is to change our organizations into a sort of cells and receptor model, just like biology uses by engineers. And I think what is closer to most of you is probably from the DevOps world, is this idea of decoupled teams and interfaces. Like the whole microservice story this is what that is about to some extent. I think that the ultimate goal of API programs is to change your information architecture of your organization. So you can work with decoupled teams that are interacting through interfaces. So you can reduce the cognitive load so they can focus purely on what is important information for a team, so they can react to that and respond to that and act on it. And also share with the rest of the organization what's going on inside of the team. And then this is how I model that, kind of like an iceberg. There's the digital proximity thing, that's the shiny thing that everybody's looking at, like apps and stuff. But I think underneath all of that is the ability to deal with market complexity, is how fast can you react when something is changing? And do you need developers to address a change, or can you act yourself? So there's these two problems are digital proximity. What I mean with that is going from physical, there's a person responding to a need, to the app response, which is much faster. It's also a lot cheaper. That's this. And then the market complexity, what I mean with that is going from this world that used to be looking like it was kind of static. So there were changes, but it was not all that fast, to this world that's like constantly evolving and changing, and it's just unfollowable. Or it feels like a little bit out of control. And I like from the DevOps community this model for thinking about that, which is the Cinefin framework. What I believe that's happening in the world around us is that we're moving from a complicated system where you could work with tightly coupled teams, where you could create a very strong architecture, pretty much top-down, describing how processes should work, to a complex world where you need loosely coupled teams that can really rapidly respond to the changing environment that they're acting and working in. And this brings us to the need for creating and repurposing interfaces. Because if you have to depend on developers to do all of that, then either your whole organization needs to become a developer organization, which a lot of organizations are actually doing, but it's not always achievable for everybody. And my colleague, so I had all these slides before, and then yesterday my colleague said something really interesting, I thought. He said, when I need information, I don't want it to be a project for somebody to get that information. So it shouldn't be like a project for developers to build a new interface. It shouldn't be a project for someone like an admin to go and dig up the data and find information. Ideally, this information, these interfaces that allow us to access information, are at our fingertips, and we can go and explore what's already there, and we can reuse stuff. Maybe use some low codes to build our own, or use Postman to do pull request. Use Postman to do an API call to pull information out of an API. And I think this is the key message that I want you to ponder about. Is a Postman collection, could that be like an MVP for an interface? Could instead of having to build a full app, could a collection actually allow people to do their job, and maybe a series of collections allow to surface capabilities that you have in your organization that people can use to do their jobs? And Mehdi, also on our podcast, he talked about this basic truth that nobody goes looking for APIs. Not really. People look for abilities. That is what really matters. And I think if you look at it from that perspective, APIs can be exploration devices that help you to find opportunities for new business cases, to find opportunities for interfaces that are already hidden in your infrastructure. And I think this is what we then do is to make interfaces discoverable and findable. I think that is the big challenge of the future, because we've been building apps, we've been building integrations, we've got all these IT systems. But if I'm new to an organization, how do I know where I need to go and look to find certain information. I can go start reading the docs, but I think that we need some sort of tool that allows us to discover the interfaces that can be useful for us, and to find the interfaces once we start looking for specific things. And I think this is what we need to address in the future. Because on the organization level, I think what's going to happen is that teams, just like what Amazon did, teams should be interacting through standard interfaces to allow them to decouple more, so that they can be more independent from each other and be able to adapt faster behind their standard interface. And you can start thinking about like what parts of your organization are not yet working through some sort of standard contract, and can you maybe turn those into either APIs or maybe specific interfaces. On the product level, like, are your products, are you just offering APIs, or are you offering SDKs? Are you offering apps, or are you offering widgets? At what level of abstraction are you offering your interfaces to your community? Is that the right level? If you're servicing SMEs, like Belgium is an SME country, if you want to do business in Belgium, APIs APIs are important because they're the backbone of your infrastructure, but not everybody will have the money to do a custom integration with your API. And then it's really important to simplify or to lower the barrier to entry to start using and to start collaborating with you. And the way that you find this is you could look at what developers are doing with your APIs, and then figure out what are the interfaces that you should be making available, so that more people can take benefit of what you've done. And the last one, market niche. What market niches do you want to be part of? Do you already have interfaces for all of the problems that people need to address? Do you have building blocks that allow people to build business solutions for the markets that they need to address? Think a bit about what are the interfaces that you would need to be able to be active in a certain market segment. And to reiterate, the value of APIs is not how you can do an integration, I believe. It is what you can do with an integration. And this brings us to the title. I think I see too many organizations. Like, there are some organizations that truly are on the road to have an API product and really make money with API calls. But that's not everybody. For most organizations I've been working with, APIs are a complementary product to an existing product that's further amplify the capabilities of partners, that make it easier to onboard new customers or something like that. And very few customers I've seen are actually making money from getting developers to use their products. And I think this is kind of a misconception that comes from the darlings of the API industry that are very heavy, that are that kind of companies. And there's this idea that you need to cater to this special audience. And don't get me wrong, I think it's important that we take care of developers and we give them a good developer experience. But I think we also need to watch out that we don't blindly chase developers as if they would be unicorns, turning ourselves in all kinds of weird places to be able to get their business, if that is not the business, if that's not how you're going to be creating value for our organization. I think it's much more healthy to think about developers as pioneers. What I mean with that is to think about developers as pioneers means that you need to give them really good tools so that they can go out there and explore and find the business value, find the interfaces that will make sense for your communities, find the business cases for how your APIs could be used, so that your business can grow and discover new business opportunities and new value. And in contrast with if you think about developers as unicorns that you need to give goodies and placate, so that they would become your customer, so you can use them as the pass-through through the value. I think this is a healthy way of thinking about it, because then you'll also be looking for what these pioneers are doing with your APIs, and if there's maybe other things that you could be doing on top of your APIs to facilitate the flow of value to maybe part of that audience that doesn't have the ability to make those investments that development always is. A really interesting example of this is KBC Bank. They're a Belgian, well, they're a regional bank. They're also active in a couple of other countries. I'm an advocate for them because I love what they're doing. We built a developer portal with them that doesn't only have software solutions, so like not only software developer solutions, but also business solutions, and it's really fascinating. I would go and have a look, developer.kbc.be. So my question to you, and I'm rounding off here, and if there's maybe questions still, are you already using Postman as an interface? Are you using it for more than developer experience purposes and documentation? And if you do, have you thought about creating an interface for your interfaces and how you could organize those interfaces maybe together with your APIs to create visibility in the tools that you have available for your customers, your colleagues, and your partners? Maybe your dev portal could be your onboarding tool. If you're interested in any of this stuff, go and there's the link here that's for our newsletter where we write about things like this. I've also put my email address. It's always safer to put info at also, because sometimes it's a lot of emails. Feel free to reach out or ask a question here in the comments. I'm happy to talk about any of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristof. That was very good, very informative. A lot of the stuff I heard regarding the search kind and find and discovery echoes kind of the public workspace is what Postman is doing now also. So that was great. I wrote a question regarding API first. Do you see more and more companies still using an API as a complementary offering, or do you see more companies moving that as the primary offering?
Well, there's API first, or API design first. That's another story still, but we work with a lot of enterprise companies. We have I think 19 banks that we've worked with at this point, and they have other stuff. Their business is not selling digital services necessarily. So I think the big underbelly of the API space is people doing APIs internally, where it's an internal information network that facilitates the business, or people building API interfaces for their partners or to facilitate like a complementary product on top of their existing offerings. And I think that the pure digital plays are rather an exception than the rule. And this is different in the software world, right? In the scale-up world, it's a whole different story. It's all about information services. But I think most companies don't start. At least from what I've seen, they don't start with, we're going to sell API calls, or we're going to do a very specific monetization game. Everybody wants to monetize APIs, but typically it starts as a complementary thing.
Yeah, great. Any other questions in Slido or chat? I do want to point out that I think the other sessions are going to start very soon. And I can put a link in there to where you can find the additional sessions in the chat, so you don't have to go search. I'll put that there. Okay. Other than that, just thank you for coming and talking today, Kristof, and thank you for everybody who attended.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.